You must stay at home. Stay at home.
Hello and welcome to Lockdown, hosted by Steve Bomford with Mike Davis-Marks. Our armed forces operate in challenging environments. Week by week, we'll explore what we can learn from their experiences.
Hi Steve, how are you? I'm looking forward to listening to the next episode of Lockdown Podcast. And this is someone I think I've never met before, Jack.
That's right, you haven't. He came on one of our workshops last year, I think.
And from what you've told me about him before, he's an army veteran who lost his leg in service and has had a few issues that he's coped with. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, he's had quite a lot of very serious health issues, which we'll be talking about. So let's have a listen to hear what he has to say. Can you tell me a bit about your time in the army, please, Jack?
Yeah, so I joined the army at 18, basically because I had nothing going for me. So I joined Princess Wales Royal Regiment, and being the local regiment and a senior infantry regiment, also known as the Tigers. And our time in the army was spent mainly training, travelling, and meeting cracking people. It was outstanding, is what I could say. All I can say, and I'll do it again. At the same time, it was the most challenging thing I think I've ever done in our life, and it made me into what I am today. And the people I met, the brothers, will always be part of it. And I think the best part of the army for me was the barrack life. What I mean by that is when you're amongst your muckers, your friends, you're digging in, you're having a laugh, you're going out and just part of this absolute team. And obviously got to travel the world. Best way of describing traveling the world with the army is like going around the local area, digging a shell scrape every night, and saying, that's the travel, because you get to go to these nice countries, but you don't really get to see much other than get beasted. And I think for me, it taught me a lot of different aspects and ways to be. So my time wasn't really anything what you call special. I served for 7 years, got injured in 2010 in service. As a result, I was medically downgraded and worked in the G4 side of things, so the admin side. So for the first 3 years, I was part of a company and on exercise, travelling around. And for my final tenure in the army, it was spent doing more of the admin side of things due to the severity of my injuries. And that was helping out in the stores, helping out with recruitment. And at the time when I served, 2008 to 2015, the whole mood was very kinetic because we had Herrick going on, Afghan. So it was, the training was very intense, and we were always getting ready and briefed up. And I mean, going back to before I got injured, the physical challenges going on exercise were amazing. And places like Senny Bridge, where you'd spend 3 weeks freezing your nuts off, learning to wash out of a mess tin, going up to Scotland, and then going to the red hot heat of Cyprus and the Ghan. And it's just all that different sort of scenarios and ventures that you get to do that mould you as a person. And I mean, For me, I found it quite challenging at times in the army, especially at the start, because you're sort of thrown into this group of people who you don't know, got no idea who they are, and suddenly you're in a room of 8 and you're meant to be bunk buddies. By the end of that, your best buddies, your brothers, and we will be for life. And for me, my time in the army was a time of two halves, basically. One of doing what you'd call actual soldiering, and the other half was on the admin side of things. So I was watching our muckers go out and do the soldiering whilst I was staying behind. And that, for me, the final part, I did enjoy the recruitment and the giving back to the regiment, the Princess Wales War Regiment, but I found that most difficult because I've wanted to be part of it and I couldn't.
How did that prepare you for living in lockdown?
I would say it stood me in massively good stead, and I'll say it's the army teaches you to adapt to the situation at hand and also to wait out until for further orders. So, if you're told something, abide it, follow the rules, and don't speculate until you hear the next set of orders. So, for instance, the next government briefing. And what I mean by adapting to the situation at hand is you're suddenly told that, right, you're not allowed to go out the house, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. Well, forget about what you're not allowed to do and look at what you can do, adapt and improvise. So for us, I've got a little 3-year-old girl, Rebecca. She's like the Duracell Bunny on speed, and she is, she needs a lot of very outdoors, and we're lucky enough to live in the countryside with a garden, so we can do that. But to keep her entertained and keep that education, you sort of find yourself looking at what you got around the house to make things. So, for instance, the other week we built a Rapunzel boat out of a cardboard box with a little canopy made out of a sheet. But that taught her how to draw, construction, how to paint, and also it was accounting. So rather than focusing on all the negatives, it taught you to follow and adapt and make the best out of what you got. And I think that's what a lot of people are forgetting. And it teaches also about selflessness, and that's a massive thing I think that we all need to take out of this, is just doing what you're told is helping others. It may not feel like you are, but it's not being greedy and not being selfish. It's looking out for your number two, your oppo, your next door neighbour. And that's the other thing. I mean, for me, it taught me to make sure that your friends are okay. So whether that's picking up the phone and just ringing an old mate or a member of BLESMA just to make sure they're okay. It's that sort of thing that keeps people's chins up. And I think the army has stood us in massively good stead. And I'd say that a lot of ex-soldiers, I know a lot of ex-servicemen out there, and women are volunteering to do jobs to help the NHS and help the country, but at the same time they're finding ways to adapt at home.
Quite like what you said there about how doing what you're told helps others. I mean, that's such an important message, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think that's the thing. There's a lot of speculation goes around. The only official source really is what the government say, but it's not hard. The rules are there, plain and simple. You know, it's like in the barracks, on camp, you're told what to do. Don't walk on the grass. You don't, if you walk on the grass, you're going to get told off. And it is literally like that now. So it's not hard. Go out to the shop and get what you need for the week. Be sensible, write down what you need, and have fun at home. Enjoy the time. We're in spring, people. That's how I see it. I mean, it's gleaming outside, the sun's shining. You can be sunbathing out your window. You can be doing what you like. Use this time to have fun and reconnect.
Yeah. So you
How I see it.
you talked about what you've been doing with your daughter, a Duracell Bunny, I think the phrase you used. How is it different now? How is your relationship different with your daughter now?
I'd say my relationship with our daughter is massively different. So before the lockdown, she did swimming classes twice a week, ballet. She'd come down the farm with regularity, go out for long walks, and went to nursery 4 times a week. But I was in hospital for the first two months of this year. Went down like a biff chip with pneumonia and some other disease, which are immunosuppressant disease.
Yeah.
So when I went in, I had this little girl. When I came out, she changed massively. But I've managed to focus our time with her, and the stuff we've done and created, and our relationship's grown so much better. I've got this girl now that wants to come to her daddy and have fun, that will sit down, we'll have story time together. And it's the relationship with our wife. All right, everyone's going to have tense moments. Our bond's become a lot closer as well. It's like you're a team.
Yeah.
This is my little fire team section. Best way of putting it. And we have knitted so much closer, and you're looking and you think, rather than just stick the telly on and say, right, watch this, go sit down and do some painting, get the crayons out, don't eat the crayons, draw with them, or don't let your daughter loose with a permanent marker because she will Picasso your walls, and that's quite emotional. But it's that connecting, and people don't get that in normal day life where they're busy working, a lot of people. And I know for myself, I don't get that much time before this to connect with my wife and daughter, especially being in hospital, and the improvement's been massive.
So you said you were in hospital at the beginning of the year and you had pneumonia. Obviously, that's quite a serious illness, but obviously it's quite relevant to everything that's going on at the moment. So, having had that, how does that make you feel about the COVID-19, the virus?
So I gotta say, to me now, as much I try not to think about it, and I do, and you basically got to live by it is what it is. But for me, in the back of my head, so I've been put classed as one of the vulnerable.
Yep.
In the back of my head, especially early this year, having gone into respiratory arrest and seeing these patients on the news on ventilators, it does scare me and it does make me quite anxious, but I have to put that in the back of my head. I don't like to let that show in front of my family, but you find that you're more cautious about what you do. I mean, and when this whole COVID-19 came out, I was still in hospital.
Yep.
And it had just kicked off in China. And I can remember sitting there, I was on a respiratory ward, and this is the first time I'd ever really sort of had respiratory problems. And all I can say is anyone that's got respiratory problems from asthma onwards and lives, I take my hat off to you, because having it now, it's the most debilitating thing I think you can ever have. And that fear of what I experienced earlier this year and going through that again with COVID-19 scares me.
I'm not surprised at all, Jack. It's like you know more than most of what it could be like.
that's it. And I've got to say, it's the staff are doing an absolutely amazing job, and hopefully now people will realise the severity of respiratory problems within other people, because they will have experienced themselves.
Yeah.
And hopefully now people take more consideration of people with respiratory, so be it when they're smoking or whatever, you're looking out, because that inability to breathe, that basic function that we all take for granted, when you can't do it and you've got someone doing it for you, and you become fatigued, your whole body hurts, and you get to the point where you're too tired to actually breathe. And that's what happened to me earlier this year.
Wow.
And that's what's happening now to these corona patients, COVID patients. They're having to be breathed for, and it's absolutely just debilitating.
So that's the importance, as you said earlier, about doing what you're told, isn't it? Really, there's a real benefit for to do so.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I take, like, earlier this year, I was absolutely fit. It was a howling winter. Nothing seemed up. Then on the Friday of that week, I felt a bit cramped up, couldn't see properly, hadn't felt that rough, that week. And then all of a sudden, I went man down at home on Friday and got resuscitated in the ambulance. And that happened all without me sort of knowing, if you get what I'm saying. And that's what's happening with this COVID. People are going out saying, oh, well, it's not going to happen to me, but you don't know.
No.
And all I can say is, like, you go back to, and it's that, oh, just do as you're told and don't be part of the problem.
Yep.
Help. It just comes down to being selfless, not selfish.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well made. We sort of talked a little bit about spending more time with your daughter. I'm just wondering if you're doing things differently, like for yourself more than for the whole family. Have you taken up any new hobbies, an exercise regime, recipes? Did you mention you've been doing some writing? Is that something you've started more recently?
Yeah, so I took up writing a journal. Mainly, it was part of this challenge. So there's a lot of things going around, obviously, on the internet, where people can take up things. And I found through the Development Society, DevSoc, who's a group, and they set up this thing called the Writing April Challenge, where you've got a journal, just write 230 words a day thereas of whatever you feel like. And I thought, you know what, I'll give that a go. There's something to do. And I took up, so I've taken to writing a journal, and it's quite amazing. It's something I've now ever done before. But you sit down, you put pen to paper, and all of a sudden, your thoughts are getting put on this page, and you're writing what's coming into your head, and it could be anything, what happened that day. And before you know it, 45 minutes is gone, you're completely relaxed, and it's nice. It's almost being kind to yourself. Other things that have changed for me is the way I cook. So I love cooking anyway, used to really enjoy it. And it's something that I find, especially in recovery, because I'm now that able to do too much physical stuff, because I end up sounding like an asthmatic ferret, sweating, and obviously in the recovery phase you've got to take it slowly. I've got a jelly belly, proper dad's bod from eating too many double deckers in hospital, so the whole cooking side of things is good, but what you do is you look at what you got in the cupboard, and the amount of different types of meals we've cooked and had because of it have been quite outstanding. So one of the things was we had a lettuce that was going off. We hate wastage. Wastage is a dirty word, and found out you could stir fry it. So stir fried it, made this garlic, went Mary Berry and made like this nice dinner. And stir fried lettuce is now the way forward. It's absolutely lovely. But it's looking at what you got around. Training wise and exercise, a lot of it has come down. So I've got a rowing machine thanks to BLESMA, as you know, is a limbless veterans charity, and they very kindly got us a rowing machine to aid our recovery. So that's to help the muscles around my stump and also my breathing. And I find that what I've done is got myself into a nice routine with the day. Get up, get washed, dressed, do the 3 S's, go down and start a day like you would normally. So I think that's quite another important thing. Don't just get up and mong it. Get up and live your life like you would normally. All right, you're not going out the house, but do the things that you'd normally do, because otherwise you're going to slip into that sort of like feeling sorry for yourself category.
It's about routine, isn't it? And giving yourself a sense of purpose.
Exactly. Give yourself that sense of purpose and routine. And another thing I've sort of taken up is this breathing exercise of the spring evening, 10 minutes, go outside, bit of peace and quiet, and then just sort of breathe for 10 minutes. Shut your eyes and take in what's around you. And again, it's amazing how much it relaxes you and puts into perspective everything around. And that's another thing that I think's changed for me, is slowing the pace of life down.
So that's quite a lot, if I'm being honest. So do you think you'll keep doing those things once this is all over, or maybe some of them?
No, I think I'll carry it on. I think this whole journey of whatever you want to, I mean, people call it lockdown. I think it's been quite gleaming. I mean, I've got to spend time with my family. The amount of positives I'll take out of it, and my mindset and the way I look at things has changed massively in the way I've done things. And I think a lot of that I will carry on. I won't, spending time with the daughter isn't something that I'll just stop and say, right, well, I can go out now. So you can, I wouldn't leave a 3-year-old at home, folks, don't worry, unattended, because she might set fire to something. But it's taking that time to journal and disconnect from the television and Netflix binging and reconnecting with what's natural. And I think that is definitely something I'll carry on, and the whole mindset and ethos that I sort of go by. I mean, one of the things was when I was in hospital, I met this chap, ex-Spitfire pilot, and he sort of kept my morale up. Dennis Keeper, absolutely, well, what you call a stoic Englishman. And he's now in a residential home, and I ring him every other day. And he made me chuckle the other day, because he was sat there, rung him up, asked how he was. He said, well, I can't complain. I'm sat here, French doors open, cup of tea in hand. Shame it's not a beer, but that's that. And, it's that, again, checking in on others, seeing how others are feeling. And that's something as well that I'll carry on, making sure that others are okay.
Yeah, I think also doing that yourself helps yourself as well, doesn't it? It's about having people to talk to that, because when you're on lockdown and you're sort of confined with your immediate family, it can get a bit, well, testy sometimes, can't it? So talking to different people is kind of, I think anyway, for me, it's quite important as well.
Yeah, I think it is. It helps yourself, like you say. It's not only that, it gives you a sense of purpose. So by ringing someone up, you've done something that day. It's 1% gain if you look at it like that. You've done a good deed if you want, and like you say, you put it quite nicely. Testing, living on lockdown with your whole family. Yeah, I think I've stared at the wall quite a lot just to sort of calm down. Let's put it. So yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to seeing stir-fried lettuce on MasterChef and reading your book by the end of this, your journals. But all joking aside, well, you never know, it may come true. One, you become a published author.
I'd need spelling lessons, grammar, and all of that first.
I am not volunteering for that job, Jack.
Now, you volunteered the other day, Steve. So you are now my tutor.
Okay, well, we'll discuss that later, shall we? So, just one last question. What are you most looking forward to doing once this is all over?
The thing I'm looking most forward to is Mount Tubcal, which is a challenge.
Where's that, Jack?
Mount Tubcal is the highest peak in North Africa. It's in the Atlas mountain range in Morocco.
Okay.
So it's a challenge set up. It's run by Tribal Tracks, and it's alongside BLESMA, in aid of BLESMA. So it's a trek up to the summit of Mount Tubcal and back down again. And it's obviously to raise money for BLESMA. And that is the thing that I'm most looking forward to, because for me, that's my driving force. I signed up to it, actually, funnily enough, on a drunken night with a mucker who was doing it as well, volunteered to do it. So there's a team of 8 of us doing it. My oppo, who, again, he's also a member of BLESMA, and 6 normal civvies, I think, or they might be ex-servicemen. I don't know who they are. So there's a team of 8 of us going up, led by Tribal Tracks, and it is going to be physically and mentally challenging. It will be the furthest I've ever walked on my prosthetic. So, and I don't know how my stomach's going to fare up to the heat. But in terms of focus on and getting something done, Mount Tubcal, and I see it for me as a gain of 2 halves again. For me, it's a massive personal achievement if I get it done. Well, not if, when I get it done, because I will complete it. But it's also a way of thanking those that have supported me. As you know, I mean, I've had a lot of people backing me and supporting me along my journey, and I see by doing Mount Tubcal a way of showing others that the time that they've invested into us and supporting us, whether it be from the physios all the way to my friends who have said, you can do it, you know, saying thank you. Look, I haven't just monged it. I haven't just felt sorry for myself, but I've got up and I've done something, and your hard work and your belief in me has shown, you know, that I can do something, and that's what I'm most looking forward to. And it's also raising money for the charity that has helped my family and myself massively. You know, they were there when I was in hospital, not just for me, but for my family and my wife and my daughter, which again is a massive thing, because as you can imagine, you're being an absolute biff chit in hospital, and the support officers are checking in on your wife to make sure that she's all right. And by raising funds and awareness for them, again, it's a thank you for everything that they've done. So that's my biggest thing.
That's great. Do you know when you're going to be doing that? I mean, is that just like a ridiculous question now?
Now, so it was set for June. Now it's been told to wait out till September. It's definitely happening, and I think they may well be looking at, now obviously what the severity of the situation, January next year. But I know it is something that's definitely happening. That's been confirmed by Tribal Tracks, who I've got to say have kept us informed, and it's just been good the whole way through. And I think, you know, it's that's what I'm looking forward to most, that and taking our daughter around the park to push on the swing, because she keeps seeing the swing every day and it's doing my nut in, her asking me, can I go on the swings? So the minute she can, I'll go push her on the swing just so she can be quiet.
I'm not entirely sure it will keep her quiet, because I'm sure there's other things that she'll want to do as well. I think what you're doing there to give something back to BLESMA is great. So well done, Jack. If you're setting up a fundraising page or something, do let us know. We can sort of give that a plug for you as well. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for coming onto the podcast.
Well, no, thanks for having us, Steve. And I'd just like to say thank you for all that you've done, because I don't know if people know this, I'd just like to say, but the stuff you do and your wife Rachel for the veteran community and the workshops that you setting up that hopefully will start running after Corona. You know, you and Rachel have done so much as well to give hope and positivity to a lot of veterans. And I myself, when I met you down at the beach for a brew, you know, meeting you, you gave me a sense of purpose that day. And, you know, thank you as well. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. So, hope you have a lovely weekend and I look forward to seeing you for an ice cream once all this lockdown business is over.
That would be brilliant. Thank you for your very kind words there, Jack. And also, when this is all over, as you say, we could maybe come up for an ice cream and get on those swings as well. Join you and your family there. Thank you very much. So that was quite interesting, wasn't it? What do you think of that, Mike?
I thought it was more than interesting, Steve, actually. Jack is one of those sort of people we used to call in the Navy the salt of the earth. The sort of person that the Navy or the Army or the other services depend on. Utterly reliable, trustworthy. You know, I'd expect if he hadn't lost his leg, he would still be a soldier now, giving great service to his country.
I think he would be. By the other services, do you mean the RAF?
Yeah, well, it's a bit like the Scottish play. It's the name you don't speak.
I see.
Anyway, I thought he gave a really good account of himself, and and you asked, as always you do, about some really sort of searching questions, which I thought he answered well. I was really interested to hear about his 7 years in the army and what he thought he'd gained from it, particularly how that now applies during lockdown. And then he went on to tell us about some of the health issues had this year, which were of a respiratory nature, but not COVID-19 related, which sound pretty scary to me.
That must have been truly frightening to be in hospital, I think he said, for 3 months with a pneumonia-related illness. And then he was obviously hoping to go home. Well, he did go home into, to his surprise, a COVID-19 world. I don't know. I can't imagine what that must have been like for him.
Well, he described it as scary, and he said it was one of the most debilitating events of his life. And and I'm sure that's true. So he's probably had some experience of what COVID-19 might be like without actually having contracted COVID-19.
Yeah, which wasn't a great experience for him. But I think he was also quite positive, wasn't he, about his experiences at home?
Unbelievably positive. Actually, I can't believe how positive he was given the circumstances. Here is a person who's lost a leg, had to leave the army, which he loved, prematurely because he was invalided out. Had to cope, adapt his life to life with one leg, and all that entails. A very young daughter, 3 years old now, and the stresses and strains of a wife who probably didn't go up the aisle to marry a one-legged person, is adapting herself. I thought he was amazingly positive, and I think actually an inspiration to all of us, really.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I'm still in regular contact with Jack, and every time I ring, he's got some sort of medical issue, or he's off to the doctors, or the nurse is there to help him because he's having his prosthetic looked at, or what have you. So it's a ongoing set of issues, to put it mildly.
I noticed that actually you asked him about, what sort of things had he taken up since lockdown, and he said he talked about writing a journal, which he found relaxing and helpful, and just the time when he was doing it, and then indicated later that you were going to be his editor-in-chief when it came to publishing it. Steve, I didn't know you could read and write.
Well, I was surprised. I think it's because, Jack accuses me of using big words, but obviously that's a relative term. I may be on the lower end of the spectrum for big words.
Yeah, I don't do big words. I'm a submariner. In fact, submariner is probably the biggest word I know. Anyway, he also talked about cooking. He always liked cooking, and but he described that actually he was adapting his cooking to what was in the cupboard, and has come up with a brand new recipe, partially based on Mary Berry, called stir-fried lettuce. And I was hoping that we could get the recipe off him and publish that for all our listeners.
give it a go, shall we, for our next barbecue, whenever that might be.
Here's the stir-fried lettuce, yes indeed. I thought also what came out very strongly was what the army had prepared him for in advance of not just lockdown, but also, his incapacity in hospital, where he must have been at some risk when he started getting these respiratory problems. In fact, I think there was a respiratory arrest and he was resuscitated in the ambulance. So that sounds pretty severe to me. But his training to help him make him more adaptable, to set routines, to follow orders, and his understanding that following orders was actually helping other people. I thought that was really telling, actually. I thought that was a really good point he made.
I think Jack as a person as well is not inclined to give up, and he's quite tenacious as well. So I think the seriousness of the issues that he was facing is manifest in his behaviour, that he took it very, very seriously. I mean, he is quite fortunate and he lives out in the countryside. So in some respects, he's in a very safe place. But nonetheless, that is a very serious set of problems to face.
But he faced it very stoically, with a lot of courage and tenacity, as you said. And I just take my hat off to him. I'm not wearing a hat, but if I was, I'd take it off. And I think he's the sort of person that every organisation needs lots of, because it's selfless, it's dedicated, it's diligent, it's persevering. It's very positive, really positive. He talked about what we can do rather than what we can't do, and adapt what we can't do to what we can do. I mean, that's a lesson for all of us, isn't it?
I think it is. And also his desire, and I can't remember the name of the mountain that he wants to walk up to raise funds for BLESMA, in order that he can give something back. But just having the inclination to even do that in his situation is quite something.
It's Mount Tupkal, which is in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. It's the highest mountain, I understand, in Morocco, about 4,000 metres. And I think that the challenge he set himself, which he now thinks has been delayed to January for obvious reasons, but is in aid of BLESMA, is a fantastic thing to do. He's an inspirational figure. I hope he does write that book, Steve, and I hope you do edit it. I'm willing to help you if you get any words over 5 letters. But I hope he does write that and includes the Tupkal expedition if it goes ahead, because I think it will be inspirational.
He is definitely writing the journal. I don't know what's in it, but he's very keen. He's also actually very good at drawing. He's quite talented in ways that you might not necessarily expect. It's sort of, it just happens to be that he's very good at these things, and then he mentions them in passing, and you think, what did you just say, that you enjoy drawing, doing a bit of watercolour? And he's quite a surprising lad.
Writer, chef, mountaineer, actually inspirational, motivational speaker, I would add to that list. Jack, we take our hats off to you.
Certainly do, and I think that's been a very interesting chat there, Mike, so I look forward to the next time.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear more, why not subscribe to the Lockdown podcast? To get in touch with Company of Makers, email us at lockdown@companyofmakers.com.